can you just turn on Claude and let it talk to our SharePoint? I'm like, I could, but you're about to find out really quick once I say, what's Raafat's salary? And turns out he actually put his data in the wrong place. And now,
are we able to adjudicate this in minutes or hours rather than weeks and months to make sure that it's processed correctly? So one individual is not going to have all those answers, but one of the keys to success is, do you have that ability to reach out to that person that you know, or that person within your organization that you can pull in and say, hey, your background, your expertise, I know I need someone like you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Nobody Told Me About It, a show for anyone who's really in charge of IT, but might not be very technical. Tad is out again. He's on a much needed break. And I am here today with Raafat, a financial management consultant and CPA. And we have a little bit of a twist today as far as what we're going to talk about. It's still IT, still AI, very heavily, but wanted to get real consultants out there who can come and speak to things that may be in your industry or you could probably relate to. Nobody Told Me About It. We deal with the rage bait and all the hype and all of the things that you see all over LinkedIn with everyone being the expert. And many people are. I don't want to take away from anybody's hustle, but there's a lot of hype just to promote their content. And so the one thing we pride ourselves about here is we break through that. Anyway, let's get started. I'm going to let Raafat introduce himself, what he does, and we are going to talk about the financial space, AI, IT, what people are getting right, what people are getting wrong in the new space, and where you need to be. So without further ado, Raafat, please say hello to the lovely folks of the World Wide Web and introduce yourself.
Hello all, pleasure to be here and excited for it, Nabil. Thanks for the invite and looking forward to today's discussion. As Nabil mentioned, I'm Raafat, financial management consultant, CPA. Been in this field for over 15 years. And as we go through today's discussion, looking forward to diving deeper into how AI, innovative technology, continued collaboration with the financial management world has continued to grow exponentially over the past number of years. Talk about a little bit of what we're seeing today, but a lot about what we expect to see here in the future and how we can accelerate a lot of the demand that we're seeing in the financial management world using AI, using technology, and going through some of these questions today. So looking forward to it and appreciate the invite, Nabil.
Man, thank you for showing up. And after that introduction, do you just want to take my job now? Or listen, AI is not coming to take your job. Raafat is.
There you go.
All right, well, let's just dive into this. Where can the financial management side of organizations leverage the technology available today to drive more efficiencies or really just better results?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of it today, Nabil. In the financial management world, there's a tremendous opportunity, right? And I make the joke, but it's also, right, a tone of seriousness of it is, hey, the accounting and financial management world, we're the cool kids now. There's a lot going on in the accounting and financial management world where technology is an absolute must. It's 2026, but the acceleration and adoption of artificial intelligence, machine learning, to be able to accelerate some of the day-to-day activity that you see in some of the core work that financial management consultants, that auditors, that tax preparers do today. A lot of the things that folks used to see as monotonous, as boring, there's the acceleration of the adoption of artificial intelligence, of machine learning to be able to accelerate some of those activities so that you get to the more in-depth, more creative consultation type work, but we're also seeing it with things like fraud detection services, the ability to no longer have to manually review every transaction, every claim that comes through, but be able to leverage some of that AI capability to be able to accelerate finding that needle in the haystack, being able to accelerate that tax preparation capability. And we see a lot of these companies popping up now where no longer is there the need for manual input. You can now accelerate that using artificial intelligence and innovative technology to be able to get you to that 80%, 90% mark, and then use your capability as a subject matter expert to really find opportunities for clients to drive value.
So you've always been cool in my eyes. So you've always been the cool kid. The I like what you said, and I've seen that in your career growth yourself the last couple of years. I've seen you adjust to that really well, and so I'd like you to speak a little bit more on where agencies should also change their focus or be focused to accelerate their mission.
Yeah, it's a great question, and adaptability is king right now. Being able to move and pivot, not be locked in, and we're seeing that with a lot of different industries across the board, right? Whether it's your financial management industry, your healthcare industry, federal agencies, across the board, being able to adapt and change, not continue to be locked in, have that modular capability to move and shift based on the demands of your environment is one of the key tenets that any organization needs to keep in mind. And I think a lot of leaders are seeing that today, rapidly deployed, rapidly adjusted, and the ability to navigate needs, not just for today, but that rapidly evolving world that we're all living in and that we see. That is paramount. And that's something that whether you're a new consultant, a senior consultant, a leader, you have to have that in the forefront of your mind to be able to succeed in today's environment.
I love what you just said there as far as being able to adapt and change. Again, I love focusing on hype myself or rage baits and taking them down. And so you're in a space, we're all in a space where there's just so much hype around AI and taking your jobs. And like you said, it's more about being able to adapt and change. And so I love that. Talking about finance and AI. So where does AI actually work in finance's workflow today?
Yeah, so we talked about some of it, right? And I think the things that you see, getting away from a lot of the manual activity, the manual inputs, the pieces of the puzzle that really are inefficient, and that combining that adaptability but that growth to be able to have right that accelerator on the front end. And the narrative that you hear a lot of is, hey, AI is coming to take your job. Everyone's heard it. A lot of folks are worried about it. It's the adopters of AI, the individuals who can say, hey, right, I'm in a unique position where I don't have that AI or technology background, but I have that business process, right? That driver background to be able to say, hey, how do I use this technology to be able to marry it into the industry that I'm in? So, and this goes well beyond financial management. This is any industry, right? The ability to have the technology is paramount, but the ability to marry it with individuals who understand where that technology needs to be implemented, that's the scenario that organizations are really trying to drive toward, to be able to say, hey, how do I take this technology, implement it into my existing business process, identify inefficiencies, identify manual processes that can be accelerated so that now my staff, my team, myself, we're all able to focus on those higher value drivers to the organization to drive inefficiencies, savings, return on investment across the board. So a lot of that are considerations that I think everyone is looking at from the top down across organizations.
Perfect. And again, like I hate to keep giving myself a shout out, although I'll do it all day. You know, one of the targets of our show is somebody that's now in charge of this new world that they find themselves in. And they're coming from a law background, financial background, and now they're in this new space and they're getting all this technology thrown at them. What do they do with all that? Again, you're a great example of what to do with that. So where does AI break right now?
Yeah, in both worlds, right? And we talk about this a lot, you and I, right? When we catch up and we're talking, right? Not just in these settings, but just across the board. What are we seeing? And data is king. Data is a major driver, right? To be able to have those successful outputs. We're
Yes.
seeing that all day. It's
Yes.
like, hey, bad data in is going to produce bad results, right? False positives. It's going to drive data or results that are inaccurate on the output side, but there's value in that too, especially if you're an organization or a company who is still in the adoption phase of AI. If your data is not clean, To some
Yeah.
extent, that's not unexpected, right? There is an expectation that some of that data may need to be refined, may need to be cleaned up, and AI is going to accelerate some of that. You're going to
Mhm.
see that on some of the output, and that's
Mm.
why, right, a lot of organizations, and it's a crawl, walk, run type capability,
Yeah.
right? You very often are not going to just turn something on full blown on day one, right? And we
Mhm.
see this, right? That agile sprint to be able to grow over time, to be able to
Mhm.
make sure that you're positioning yourself and your organization for success with the adoption of any of these technologies, including AI. And so data is going to be a key part of this, no doubt about it. Anyone in this industry is going to agree with that. But then governance and security as well, right? The
Yes.
acceleration of AI has placed a huge emphasis on we don't just want to throw AI at everything. That's the narrative that you see. Every headline that's out there is, "Hey, we got to adopt AI. This organization's bringing in whatever technology and capability." That's nice, but if you don't have the proper governance, if you don't have the proper
You're in trouble.
security, and we all see it, data breaches and the like. None of us want, unfortunately, a lot of it is already out there, but none of us want our information out there for anyone to be able to get their hands on. And so, being able to have each one of those tenants, being able to have clean data, being able to implement it with the proper governance and security, and that's something that obviously you can speak to quite a bit
Mhm.
with your background, Nabil. But then,
Mhm.
yes, ultimately that drives the ability to develop, deploy, and sustain models that are going to drive those efficiencies, going to drive those outputs that you're looking for as an end result. So there's
Mhm.
a multi-step process, but all of those married together get you to that final stage that drives success.
I had a hard time getting people to be open to AI for a long time. Something happened in June, July. Everybody wants it. Everybody wants it now. And so you talk about let's do this. Let's do this as a team. But first governance, first policies. Let's set some guardrails and go from there. Well, what does that cost? You bring up some money factors, and they're like, "Can you just turn on Claude and let it talk to our SharePoint?" I'm like, I could, but you're about to find out really quick once I say what's Rafat's salary, and turns out he actually put his data in the wrong place, and now I need to go have a talk with the manager because I do what he does, and the pay scale is different, and you're not going to find those problems until it's too late. So yes, on the governance, yes, on cleaning the data. So there's two parts of the data. Is not only is it good data so that you don't get garbage out, but you're also governing it. You're putting some DLP behind it so that if you
Yeah.
place a document in the wrong place, it doesn't get into the wrong hands. There's organizations that we know, I don't want to call out businesses, but there's organizations that we know, Fortune 100 companies, who allowed AI chats for their customer service. One of them was broken and people were just using that like as Claude. And they were just, instead of using it for the business's purpose, they were like, help me code my new HTML website, help me code a game. And people were using it. And on Reddit, it was funny because people were like, how much do you pay for your AI? I pay, a couple $100 a month on all of them. And they're like, it's free on this company's website. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, there are no guardrails. You can use it as you wish.
Yep.
So yeah. So with organizations struggling to maintain clean operational data, how much of that data really is a problem? Do we want to dive into that a little
Yeah.
more?
Absolutely, right. And it's organization by organization based, it's industry by industry based, right? You can't look at it across the board, but every organization that you step into, it has to be an evaluation factor, right? And it
Mhm.
has to be a partnership, right? And consulting is a partnership with your customer, right?
Yep.
Any client facing type opportunity, there has to be that partnership of, hey, we need to start with where you are today, right?
Mhm.
Meet you where you are
Where you're
today,
at.
but with a clear path on where you want to be in the future. And that's
Mhm.
the maturity, that's the plan that has to be in place. When we look at data as a factor of all of this, it's going to be the initial driver of a lot of your considerations, along with their existing business process. Are there gaps in their existing workflows that need to be addressed? Are there risks that are being introduced that the organization is aware of or potentially not aware of. All of those are those initial planning phases before you get to actual production, right? Testing of that user acceptance testing, UAT capability as you're kind of maturing. These are all things that, again, right, you with your background, Nabil, a lot of your audience is already aware of. But moving fast is nice, but moving faster than the implementation plan, than the governance structure that you have or that you need is going to lead to results that frankly probably set you back behind wherever you were when you first started. And so all those considerations in place, if you have a mature assessment of your organization, an understanding of where you are today, and then, and this is something we talked about early on, Nabil, is, hey, making sure that you have that capability to adjust. What we know today is not necessarily what we're going to need tomorrow. And that's a huge part of this. And you see this across industries, is that lock-in is a potentially scary thing, right? To be locked into a solution, not knowing what the future holds and not knowing what you need is a tremendous risk to an organization to say, hey, this is the solution that I'm using today and there's no changing it. Well, you better be really, really damn sure that that's going to work for you 3 to 5 or plus years from now, versus having a platform that you can then modularly adjust to be able to say, hey, today this is what I need. 6 months from now, 3 years from now, I need more of this, less of that, or frankly, take a piece of this all out completely and bring in this new capability. You touched upon it, right? Just kind of the timeline of, hey, even from June and July, the adoption of AI, that's just a couple of weeks and months. Now start to extrapolate that out over years. We don't know what technology is going to be out there. It's rapidly evolving. Do you really, as a leader, as an organization, want to say, this is what I'm using, I love it today and I'm going to love it in the future? That's a tough way to look at things, right? So it's a huge consideration for any organization and their leadership.
Love it. Love the conversation. The maturity assessment. This is why I love having consultants on here. As a consultant, we touch different clients, different industries, different, and I love that part of it, where we're not just locked in a certain industry. And so I love that you and I are seeing different spaces, but we're both consultants, but we're seeing eye to eye on starting with a maturity assessment and seeing where you're at, and then meeting people. So you mentioned implementations. When implementations fail, what does that look like?
I think a lot of it really is rooted, Nabil, in being able to have that mature assessment, but then that ability to also adjust throughout the process.
Yes.
And this has been a narrative that we've kind of touched upon throughout this discussion, is the ability to have that agile approach, starting with now, right? What does that roadmap look like on day one? There is that expectation. There's the core to your solution that is a must, that is an output to the end state of, hey, we want to have this level of automation within this process across our organization. Completely fair. But as you go through that agile approach, where do tweaks need to be made? Where do those adjustments need to occur to be able to have that mature state on day one of production, but then throughout your O&M, right? Your operations and maintenance, as you go through all of that, are you continuing to assess that that solution to be able to make sure that you're not introducing risk that would cause failure? And so that's a key driver in a lot of this as well.
And so when we're talking back to hype, what can you do? What do you see people doing now that they couldn't do 18 months ago?
You're seeing a lot of that today, Nabil, right? The adoption across the financial management space, across the auditing world, the tax preparation world, financial management consulting as a whole. If you look at any or all of those different environments, auditors no longer have to do manual assessments of business processes. They no longer have to develop manual corrective action plans. Those are things when you did the walkthroughs 15 plus years ago, as I kind of date myself with my career, those were things that took weeks and months to be able to complete. The adoption of AI and automation allows you to accelerate a lot of that to be able to position yourself, to be able to look at more strategic opportunities with your client, to be able to drive results. And that's a lot of the discussion as well, Nabil, is what is the return on investment? What is the value? That is has always been front of mind, but it's even more so today with the ability to automate a lot of those manual tasks. If you look at tax preparation work, the ability to not have to manually input a lot of the forms and figures that are part of those, and to be able to look again at a strategic value driver for clients, customers, and organizations across the board. And we talked about fraud detection as well. A lot of organizations are still looking at this from a manual process. In the federal world, and you see a lot of the headlines, agencies are accelerating the adoption of automation and AI across the board to be able to identify potential anomalies, right? And it goes beyond fraud, but anomaly detection. Is this outside of the norm? Is this something that's unexpected? Is this something that we need to dig into further? Instead of looking at millions and millions of transactions, you're able to now pick out that individual transaction and say, hey, this individual transaction, this group of transactions needs to be fenced off for us to review further. And even on that adjudication review piece, there's ways to accelerate that as well using AI and automation, so that you can say, hey, are we able to adjudicate this in minutes or hours rather than weeks and months to make sure that it's processed correctly? So you're taking a lot of this and be able to say, I can just boil this from weeks and months down to minutes or hours.
Have you seen implementations fail?
Yeah, absolutely. And, fail, yes, but it's a consideration of, hey, is that the end, right? Like failure, sure. If it doesn't work and you're pulling the plug, potentially a failure. But are there going to be bumps in the road? Are there going to need to be adjustments? I don't see those as failures, right? Those are more, hey, that's part of the process. We're still, while we are, right, moving very, very quickly as a world with AI and automation, there can't be a rigidity to adoption of AI and automation. That's where you're going to see failure. But the ability to have that agile approach to be able to pivot as you see things within your organization, I would take that outside of the bounds of failure and say that's part of the process, right? And that's that pressure testing that has to occur with every organization to be able to look at it and say, is this working for us? Is this driving the value and the results that we're looking for? Great. If it's not, and we thought it was, where do we pivot? How do we adjust? How do we find further value drivers? And frankly, right, to drive that point home even more, once you get to that mature deployment, you're still going to have to continue to pressure test. The world is evolving too quickly where, whatever solution you might roll out on day one, if you just leave it to continue to run, sure, it will for a while and run successfully, but you can't just blindly turn your back on it and say, hey, we're going to leave this part of it. And you know this, right? Leave this part of it, let it operate on its own while we go focus on all these other pieces. There's continual refinement, continual assessment that has to occur for you to be successful, for the organization to be successful.
I mean, really well said, man. This is the nerdiest. It won't be the last nerdiest thing I say today, but I'm having a great time over here. Really, I mean, you're a great consultant. I mean, like, as far as like fail, but where do you pivot from here? I love that, it didn't stop there. So yeah, good call. So with what you said earlier about AI being able to do a lot of the work that took months, and it's able to do it too. So then where does a new hire, how does a first year person become mature in this process? Because that's something that, what you said 15 years ago when you started, that was stuff you were doing. Well, there's no more space for that anymore. So how do you develop in this space? How do you grow? What do you do?
Yeah, I love that question, Nabil. And it's one that's front of mind for a lot of us, right? Whether you're the actual first year consultant coming in, or you're someone who's further along in your career. And this is something we touched upon, but that adaptability, right? The ability to find opportunities to be able to drive results. Sure, right? And a lot of newer consultants, they've learned a tremendous amount in school. They understand the opportunity in front of them, but there's also the opportunity for them to be able to have that creative thinking, to look at opportunities, to be able to understand the technology and marry it with the business process that they might be assessing for different organizations. New hires, consultants, but even right folks who are a little bit longer in their career, like myself, like yourself, right? That adaptability to be able to bring in new technology and be able to look at things with that different lens is so important. And every organization's seeing it. And so, what I talk to a lot of my team about is, hey, on day one, we all need to be professionally, right, challenging each other. Have we looked at it in this way? Have we assessed it in this capability to be able to find that value driver and that return on investment that's really going to help clients now and in the future?
Yeah, good. And you know, things do change so fast. I feel like by the time you graduate from school and you actually get a job and you're actually sitting on day one, what you learned and what you're running into are, so that adaptability is where it's at. We're gonna wrap up soon here, and you know, I always tell people we got a taste of that during COVID, in the sense of when COVID hit, I guess like the first, let's say 2, 3 months of working remote, so many of my clients were not using Teams heavily. They were not doing, you know, working remote. There were companies that worked remote, but most of our clients did not work remote. And so they had to learn really quick how to use Teams, how to share, you know, files, how to work on them together, where do they sit, and all that stuff. And they had to learn that within months. And within months, everyone was a Teams, Zoom expert, and all these, you know, putting on webinars and doing good. And I tell people, take that and put it in our space every day. Like, it's
Yeah.
just quick. Things come up and we're changing plans here, you know. We're
Now,
pivoting.
so I love that point as well. And it's like, hey, that's the adaptability, that's the pivot, but that's the other piece of it, right? Nabil, is like surround yourself with smart people, right? The
Mm,
most successful people are not the folks that know every single thing A
mm,
to Z.
mm,
Especially in today's world, that's
mm,
virtually impossible, right? The
yes.
person who walks in and knows everything,
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
That's tough, right? But the person who can say, "Hey, I know a lot about my environment, my specialty. I have that deep rooted knowledge on financial management consultant, right, or financial management consulting." The individual who can also then say, I might not know everything about a specific field outside of my specialty, but I know who to reach out to. I know who to bring in, right? Folks like yourself. And this is why, right, we have very different backgrounds, but we mesh really well because the insights that you provide me are well outside of my space, but they're thought provoking, they're solution drivers, they're things that I can say, hey, I didn't really consider that in my space, but it's a piece of the solution, a piece of that puzzle that I really need to bring in. And when we talk governance and security, DLP, when we talk about the ability to mesh that with business processes and organizations, one individual is not going to have all those answers. But one of the keys to success is, do you have that ability to reach out to that person that you know, or that person within your organization that is 2 or 3 degrees away or separated, that you can pull in and say, hey, your background, your expertise, I know I need someone like you to be able to help drive the solution for that organization. So a lot of what you've already said, but a lot of great things that are out there.
And that's why I hang out with you. Closing this out, but seriously, a great conversation. I had a great time so far. Unfortunately, we're coming to an end. What are you watching in the next 12 months?
Yeah, I think a lot of the change that we've seen is great. A lot of the technology that's out there has started to mature, but
Mm,
the ability to adopt it in organizations, that's what I'm really watching over the next 12 months. How do we adopt? How do we deploy? And how do we mature a lot of these solutions? And I think, your insights into this is also, key to this. Would love to kind of hear a little bit more, Nabil, of like, hey, what are the challenges that you're seeing? But on my end, I think the adoption of it, it's starting to change, right? It's starting to shift, but we have to balance that with the proper guardrails that we talked about before, where we're not just deploying this in this name of deployment, of being able to check the box and say, my organization now has AI and automation. And there's a lot of leaders that they're, you know, their higher ups, whether it's a board of directors or the like, right? And we're seeing this in the federal space from the very highest levels of the pressure to adopt AI and automation into your space. What I'm looking for in the next 12 months is not just the adoption, but the ability to mature it with the proper governance so that we are hitting that crawl, walk, run. So that down the line, we're not looking back on something and saying, hey, we've exposed ourselves to potential risks that we could have avoided if we had a more mature deployment. And that's a big thing that I've been working on over the past number of months, is making sure that we have that rollout of it so that we're successful, not just day one, but month 6, month 12, and then even beyond that.
Love it. And then I guess if you give me a sentence, close this out with one sentence. If you had to, hate to put you on the spot, but I do love it. Well-spoken person, so I know you got this, but give me a sentence to close this out with. What's something that somebody watching this can walk away with?
From top to bottom, the organization, from leadership, managers, and consultants, have to be aligned for successful deployment. Being able to align all 3 pieces of those is going to drive your success.
Yes. Thank you for that. And I got to say, in our space, yours and mine, and I don't know if you run into it, but I run into it. We can't drive home a nice product for you if we don't have that full buy-in. And sometimes I run into that, either just a conflict or conflict of interest, or it just could be lack of motivation or even time. But yes, people all have to be bought in and dedicated to see the product through. Yeah.
100%, right? If you got aligned stakeholders across the organization, the results will show, and vice versa. If folks are not aligned, you're also going to see that in the output. So,
good point.
That coordination, that ability to align across the board, that's a huge piece of your success factor in all of this. So,
good stuff.
Love the conversation, Nabil. I appreciate you having me on. It's always good talking to you.
Likewise, man. Likewise. Thank you for being on, and I'm gonna bug you for another one down the road here. Let's let AI and everything move fast for the next 6 months, and then let's realign and get back on here and see what's changed.
Hey, I can't say thank you enough. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing more of these, and I'm a huge fan of Nobody Told Me About It. The episodes prior to this, have drawn me in. I've learned a lot from these. Hopefully the audience out there has learned a little bit today from what we've talked about, and looking forward to future discussions with you, Nabil. So huge fan, huge props, and continue doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Until next time, everybody, like, subscribe, follow, do all that stuff. And we'll see you all in the next episode.
Thanks all.